Hi, everybody. My name is Jacob. I am a self-employed mechanic. I've been working for myself for 8 years, and I've had a couple things come up in my life recently that are making me think about life change, possibly in my own personal direction. But it's caused me to reflect a lot on what I like about being self-employed and what it would look like to go back to work, or what it was like being an employee. And it got me thinking. There's probably a lot of people out there, mechanics or people in this industry, that wonder themselves, like, can I branch out and be self-employed? What does that look like? What are some pros? What are some cons? Maybe the reality of it. So I'm going to share some of my insights. These are my personal perspectives, right? Everybody's perspective is different. No two people are the same, but I've been doing it successfully for 8 years, so I think I do have some grounds to stand on. Talk about it. So here, let's just jump into it. I'm just spitballing this all off the top of my head, guys, but so the first thing would be, we'll start with a pro. My biggest pro about being self-employed, and I reflect on this a lot, is I am like the master of my time, right? I am in control completely of my time and my schedule. Now, self-employed as in I've created I don't even want to say a business, because to me, if you have a business, like, you've got employees and you've got overhead like crazy, right? Like, by self-employed, I've created a very high-paying wage job for myself, but at the end of the day, I only get paid when I'm actually physically spinning wrenches, right? But by doing that and not having employees and being able to just be myself, I'm completely in control of my time. For me personally, this has been the most biggest pro. Like, I can drop what I'm doing on a whim, and I can go, pick up my kid from school if I felt like it. I go to the soccer games. I can go to any event, right? Go grab food with my dad, go see a bro for coffee. I make work around my schedule, instead of like, I have to go to work and then have a schedule outside of that. So some people are going to want to branch out for themselves, and they're going to have aspirations of, like, money is their big motivator, right? Or success. They want a big shop with 20 employees, 20 bays, whatever. That's fantastic. Like, everybody has their own aspirations of what they want. To me, it's never been about money. It's always been about time. And I get this isn't like a get rich on drop shipping, like sexy Amazon, do this and you'll have free unlimited time for the rest of your life. It's like a blue collar man's version of like getting your time back. So the reality is, though, you only get paid when you work. Now, if you're in industry right now, and maybe you're keeping track of your hours, and you're like, damn, I'm billing out 10 hours a day. I'm working 8-hour days. I'm billing out 10s, 40 hours, 50 hours a week, no problem. Like, man, if you do the math in your head, like, I'm paid X as an employee. If I went out on my own, I could do 50 hours a week. Like, first of all, stop you right there. So when you're on your own doing everything, right, the hours that you make that are billable, it's just not going to be the reality of what you're billing out working in a environment where you have an entire team at your disposal, right? Like, you got a service advisor and a parts guy and a shop cleanup guy and somebody just finalizing and somebody taking payment. Like, so the reality is, I'll give you a quick breakdown of like what it would look like for me. Let's say I get a customer come in. I'm talking to them. I have to set their schedule, when they're going to drop off. I have to make sure I'm here to talk to them, figure out their, you ask the important questions to make my diagnosis go quicker. So then it comes in. I can charge my diagnostic fee to look it over. I get paid to do that. Then I pause. I'm like, okay, I found all these problems. Now I have to go sit at the computer, and you're doing the part side of it. The parts industry alone is like a very big skill on itself, right? Like, you're going to have to be good at looking at those two pictures as a kid, where you look at one, you look at the other, and you try to find 5 differences in the pictures. Like, that type of crap is a real thing, right? The makes and models, the variations mid-year. Personally, I work on a lot of right-hand drive, European and Japanese stuff. Finding the correct parts is a process. So you spend your time, you find all of your parts. Now you build your quote. Now you have to get it in hold of the customer. You haven't really been getting paid for any of this time, right? You finally get a hold of the customer. They say, go for it, great. Or they don't. They go for it. Now you have to get all your parts. So if you working from home, you can get parts delivered from your local reps like Napa or Lordco or whatever. But if you need dealership specific stuff, now you're going for a drive to get some parts. I actually enjoy this. If you have a fun shop vehicle and you like coffee, it's killer. But if you're time crunched all the time, like, you're always behind and you're stressed, it's frustrating to have to go drive around town to assemble parts or gather parts. get your all your stuff together, the vehicle's on the ramp, and now finally is where you make your money, and that's where you're rallying to get the job done, and this is where you make all your hours, right? So now the job's finished, you finalized it, but now you have to sit down and do the invoicing. You got to build out the paperwork for it. Then you have to relay with the customer again. You have to work around their schedule to some extent. To when are they going to come pick it up? You got to finalize payment. All of that side of it, you're not really getting paid for, right? And then you have your shop's messy. You got to do shop cleanup. You got to get rid of your waste oil and filters and your recycling and your garbage and all of those aspects you're not really getting paid for, okay? So yes, there's part margins. So I mark my parts up. I'm pretty reasonable with it. I mark my parts up 20% over my cost for my regular high volume customers. I take care of some high volume customers. And then it's up to 35% approximately for kind of everybody else. It still works out to being cheaper than list. So if one of my customers walked into Lordco or Napa to buy a part, it's more expensive for them to walk in than it is for me to get it, mark it up, and sell it to them. So I feel okay about that. And you have to account for, you're going to get shit going wrong. You're going to get comebacks. It's just part of the industry. Like, I have super high OCD. I rarely make mistakes, but I am human. I still make mistakes. I have systems in place that I can catch my mistakes before they leave. But no matter what, you're going to get part failures. Like, everything is just mass produced. Part failure, it just happens. Absolutely. So when you get a part failure, now that job's coming back and you have to take care of your customer. You're doing that job twice for free. And so the little bit of money that you make on your part margins is killer, but it kind of just adds up to cover unforeseen circumstances when they happen, because it's going to happen. So the whole point of just saying all that is, if you're working in an industry and you're making 10 hours a day and you're working on, maybe you work in a dealership or you work on something specific and you're like, wow, I could branch out on my own and I can do 10 hours a day. You got to remember, you got a lot of support networks in place to feed you that volume of work to spit out that 10 hours a day. Hypothetical numbers, guys, it doesn't matter. Something else to touch on is being self-employed. You're going to have to get really good at diagnostics. So when I branched out in the beginning, I needed volume, I needed work. I didn't say no to anybody. I was a low-priced guy compared to industry standard. Like, I was very low, and that kept me busy. But you also get all of the people that just have the most obscene problems that they can't get figured out anywhere because it costs too much. And now you're diagnosing some crazy shit, man. And honestly, I worked on every make and model, and I still do. And that's kind of my background. I was always in jobber shops working on random stuff. But that also keeps you from making killer repetition, muscle memory type hours on stuff, because I will never see the same vehicle with the same job twice in a week. I might see the same vehicle twice in a week, but even that's not common. So stuff to think about. That being said, though, the way I'll give you a breakdown here of how the pay structure looks on paper, because you don't actually need to make that many hours to make a killer amount of money, okay? So I got a little cheat sheet here. Okay, so for starters, guys, the current wage for a journeyman mechanic in my area in Canada is $33 at the low side, $38 on average, to $44 on the high side for something union and maybe higher side of scale or harsher working conditions, okay? And this is based on me searching job boards on Indeed.ca. So let's say you take a pay wage of $40 an hour, for argument's sake, and say you're killing it at 10 sold hours a day, so $400 a day before tax. Now, my personal shop rate is $105 an hour for the majority of my customers and $100 an hour for my high volume customers. I use book time for repairs and straight time for diagnostics. 1 hour minimum charge for diagnosis that I use my scan tool on. I have freedom to be flexible on this job to job. It's kind of a rough idea of how I operate. Also custom work like fabricating, welding, modifications, it's straight hours, but I lower the hours when I'm doing something I really enjoy. Now, I'm going to be honest, I don't know what the current shop rate is at local shops. I think it's in the 150 range, and I haven't raised my rates in a few years. So we talked about part margins. They vary, but approximately 20 to 35% over my cost, which still gets the final product to my customer cheaper than the list. So let's say I do 4 sold hours at the lower shop rate. That's $400. And say it took me approximately 1 hour to deal with the other aspects, parts, paperwork, etc. And for argument's sake, I didn't even beat the flat rate. So I'm into this job for 5 hours of my time to make $400. And for argument's sake, I got $300 in parts with a 20% margin. So kind of the low side of stuff here. $60 profit on parts to bank. Now, the biggest perk of being self-employed is taxes, or more specifically, tax breaks. So say 260 working days in a year times $400 a day is $104,000. Yeah, it's not fully accurate. For argument's sake, just go with it, okay? So column one, employee makes $104,000 a year, and we're going to use a 30% tax rate. This is going to vary everywhere, but let's just assume this is it. You will pay $31,200, leaving you with $72,800. Now, assume I made the $104,000 on sold hours. I get to use all of the business write-offs to lower my gross income before I get taxed. So employees are taxed as soon as they get their money versus business owners are taxed after all the expenses to operate. So as human beings in the first world, you're going to have a lot of the expenses I have, even though I have a business and you don't. So I have vehicle insurance, fuel, cell phone. I can write off 1% of my hydro, 1% of the interest on my mortgage payment, repairs and maintenance on my shop truck, tools and equipment, computers, laptops, work clothes. I can even write off gift cards and give them away as business incentives. I can take clients out for food and write that off. There's so many ways to get write-offs, right? So maybe I lower my taxable income to $60,000. Hypothetical numbers here for argument's sake. And now I'm taxed 30% on $60,000, which would be $18,000. And actually even less because it will drop me to a lower tax bracket the way it works here in Canada. But the point is to show that I keep more of what I make and I give less back to the government in taxes. All legally, of course. So yes, some business expenses an employee won't have, I have, such as insurance, subscription to Identifix. I pay approximately $6,000 a year for those. But we also didn't account for my $300 parts per job in this example at $60 profit times 260 days, equaling $15,600 in profit on parts, right? And also all the points on my credit card for juggling all this debt, which I use to buy a lot of random stuff. But so, okay, the numbers aren't exactly accurate as far as my business expenses. Like I didn't fully go into it, but you can write everything off. And it's crazy how much stuff you can write off. And a lot of stuff that you're going to have anyways, you're going to have a cell phone, you're going to have internet, you're going to have a vehicle, you're going to have maintenance on your vehicle, you're going to have fuel on your vehicle, you're going to have all this crap as an employee, plus the tools and equipment as a mechanic in industry. It's just bullshit that you are required to buy this stuff for work. And as an employee, you can't write it off, or it is extremely limited to how much you can write it off. I write off everything. I'll go buy new hoist, new tools, new this, new that. I'll go buy a new laptop. I didn't have to get a crappy laptop. I bought a gaming laptop. I had to get a new desktop. I bought a fancy gaming desktop. I bought whatever I want. It's a write-off. Like, kind of cool, right? Now, also, in my little example I just gave you, it's not accurate for how many days you're going to work in a year. You're going to have vacation days. But also, I make more than 4 hours of sold work, I think, on average, right? Like, yeah, you'll have your days where you only build out 2.5 hours or something because life. And then you're going to have days where you make 6-7 hours. You're going to have days where you make 10-12 hours. And then your part margins on top of that. If you're doing a bigger volume job, you're going to have bigger part margins. And it just all comes out in the wash to being pretty reasonable, a very respectable wage for some dude in his backyard. Now, also that's something to touch on is the reason that this works is because I don't have the overhead of my personal living property and then trying to rent a shop on top of that, right? I made this work by having a shop in my backyard. And when I got started, I didn't have this shop. I started as a mobile mechanic. And that was an interesting way for me to legally get a business license, get all the bank accounts, get the insurance, get a repair plate, which I needed in this industry, start putting money in the bank legally, start building clients, started getting busy. One thing led to another, and I couldn't afford this property on my own, but I did what I had to do, and we co-bought this property, and that's a story for another video, or probably not, because that's pretty personal, but point is, the reason that this recipe works is because I don't have a ton of overhead. I try to keep my overhead low, and I try to keep my write-offs maximized, and that's just how it works. That's the brilliance of being self-employed. Now, it's not all roses, right? There's going to be some cons. So one big con that comes to mind is, well, I even talked about it earlier, you only make money when you're spinning wrenches. And the reality is, when you get sick, there's nobody to pick up your slack. There's no sick days. There's no vacation days. Like, I generally just work when I'm ill, and I work at slower pace, and it's, it's dangerous. I'm doing dangerous stuff sometimes, but it is what it is. If I'm like absolutely destroyed and I can't get out, then now I'm calling customers to cancel and rebook, because even though I like to be master of my time, I still have to keep jobs booked so much, right, to keep the volume steadily coming in. And I kind of have this down to a science after doing it for 8 years of not overbooking and not underbooking. But you can easily book somebody in for something for an hour and a half and it escalate into a 5-6 hour job, right? And then you're doing the best that you can, and the part guy screws up and sends you the wrong part, or they do it right and they send you the right part and it was boxed wrong, like literally, like this happened last week. It happens. It's just part of it, right? And now I find myself working my weekends and giving up my weekend or my long weekend even, just because if I don't, then my entire next week is now behind, right? So by saying I'm in control of my time, is not to be taken as I work less. It's just that I can accommodate things that I find important. Arguably, I probably work more hours than I did as an employee. In fact, I'm certain I work more hours than I did as an employee. But I'm not limited to a salary. I can make as much as I work, right? So that's a con. No vacation days. But then the upside to that is I work stats and long weekends. Like in the summer, if there's a stat on a Monday or a Friday, I work it because everything is booked and everywhere is busy. I'll take off a Tuesday, Wednesday, and I'll go vacation with my family on those days or something, right? Like, avoid the crowds, I guess, would be the benefit of that. So I guess another con to talk about quickly, guys. Yeah, I'm in a different outfit. It's the same day. It's been like 4 hours, but mastered my time, right? So I stepped out for lunch with my wife. It's my birthday. Took the rest of the day off. No biggie. So another con to think about, though, is not having a support network. So if you're in industry, and beyond the fact that you got people like service advisors and parts guys dealing with a huge portion of your responsibility versus being self-employed, having other techs around that you can bounce ideas off of, and when you're stuck on a problem, it's so helpful to be able to just talk out loud with somebody that has the same knowledge base that you might have, right? Because they can see things from a different perspective. Sometimes just talking out loud about complicated shit really helps finding an answer. When you're on your own, your problems are your problems. Like you're reading forums and boards, and I have Identifix, and you're studying, and unless you got friends that are high level with your equal skill set, you can bounce stuff off. My cousin's a tech, so if I have to, I can get a hold of him, and it's helpful to just talk to somebody like him. So you're gonna have to get used to figuring stuff out on your own. The support network or lack of it could be a big con. Also, if you like your privacy and you don't mind being alone all day, it could be a positive, right? So I guess something to talk about would be, how can you get started on your own? So first of all, you need a journeyman ticket. Now, it's not to say you can't be a really good tech without a journeyman ticket, and it's not to say there's a lot of journeyman techs that aren't even good. That ticket doesn't make you good, but for legal reasons, you need your ticket. So you got to get a journeyman ticket. From there, you can get a business license. Now, to get a mechanic business license for a shop, it's a process because of all the legality with all the chemicals and the noise and all that bullshit. I mean, you have to go to commercial zone. If you want to get set up in your backyard, good luck. It's a bit tricky, but there's a way around everything, and it's a mobile mechanic license. So you can get this with literally nothing. You could have a car. You don't even need a service truck or a van. They have no idea what you have. You get a mobile mechanic license. Now you are legally able to go and get all of your insurance. Okay, so you get your insurance for your health and your safety, but you can get insurance for your customer vehicles. You can get insurance for your tools if you want to. And then very importantly is this allows you to get a repair plate. So when I got started, well, I'll talk about that in a minute, about how I found clients, but a repair plate is going to be very important. So if a vehicle doesn't have insurance on it, you can test drive it, right? And then you're going to need, at the bare minimum, like you don't need to have all the equipment at once. You have a lot of tools as a technician, but you're going to need diagnostic equipment. So you're going to absolutely need a scan tool, something reasonably good. You're going to need a subscription base to something. I use Identifix just because that was what I was familiar with, but they have Mitchell, they have All Data. There's probably some closer to freeware ones out there. Maybe, I don't know. That's a huge bill. I pay like $238, I think, a month at this point for my Identifix subscription. But it's also invaluable to have that, because I don't have any other support network, right? Like I use that to look up book times, I use that to look up wiring diagrams, troubleshoot problems, looking up fluids, just torque specs. You absolutely need something. So that's an expense you're going to have. Other tools you need, they're just going to come as you get prepared in that first 2 or 3 years of being self-employed, where you're spending a lot of money on equipment and tools, because there's a lot of shop equipment and tools that shops are just kind of, a lot of shops will have, maybe at least the ones I worked in, right? Like they had ball joint kits and they had smoke machines and just bigger pieces of equipment. All of a sudden I have to go buy all that stuff. But the upside is you're getting all the write-offs, right? And you can pay for that stuff quick on the job, so you're making enough money. So how do you find work? In the very beginning, when I branched out completely on my own here, I tried going on Facebook Marketplace, not Marketplace, but just Facebook. I tried making local ads to get people. The hard part is you look so unprofessional in the beginning. You could take a step to get more professional, and I did. I was winging it, and I was like, shit, I need to make more money. I tried to go that route, and it's just hard. People come and you meet up. You just don't look professional. You're not set up yet to be professional. I wasn't personally. I didn't get any traction doing that. My traction initially just came from word of mouth with people that already knew me from the industry. And then I found a breakthrough by taking care of people in the used car market. So I found a couple clients that represented companies of their own, where they had the used car market is if it's their livelihood to be moving vehicles constantly to make money. You have a constant churn of vehicles coming through. If you can prove yourself to them, you can get a lot of volume through like a small group of clients. Now, I've lost clients over the years, like relationships come and go, but I have had some that have been with me since the very beginning. I've one in particular, great clients. I'm very good friends with them now, and they feed me a ton of work. And over the years, we've just been able to build a very good friendship and bond, a very high level of trust, and that's super key to survival. So that's been great. Another thing that you could look into would be getting fleet maintenance. If I ever found myself all of a sudden needing more volume, I would try to find local small to medium-sized companies that have fleets of vehicles they need to maintain, and I would talk to their managers or their owners and just try to get a foot in the door, something I could do with them. So as far as advertising goes, even to this day, I don't advertise. I have my Instagram account. I'll throw my tag up if you guys want to check it out. The only reason I ever started Instagramming was, in my mindset, like if you wanted to go get a tattoo for something specific and you're going to research that, it's kind of a big decision, and you're going to look through portfolios of tattoo artist skills, right? You're going to see like, oh wow, this guy has a big portfolio, lots of work, blah, 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 I like it. So that was kind of my mindset, was let me build a portfolio, just showing some of the stuff I've worked on, some of the more maybe fun jobs or elaborate jobs, somewhere where I could show that to people that didn't know me. They can just come and I could be like, hey, look, here's my Instagram, here's something I've done, right? And then they gain a bridge of confidence just in that alone. I found that to be pretty accurate. Like I've had random people follow me on Instagram and they've come several towns over for me to work on their vehicles. And I'm kind of like, what? Like, you don't have people in your town that can like do something simple, like put a clutch in or whatever. But they liked what I did and I'm reasonably priced. It was worth it for them to come a couple towns over. That wasn't my intention with my Instagram, but hey, it's more business, right? Beyond that, I just hand out business cards, and it's very choosy who I hand my cards out to, because I don't just run around and like throw them out at random strangers. I really like to vet my clients in a kind of a weird way, but it keeps my client base to not only being people that are really good, but they're people that I am really happy to help out. And that falls under a pro as well, is that like all of my clients, not only are they providing me money and I'm providing them a service, but I'm saving them money, and I'm very honest and good at what I do. So I'm finding their problems, in a very reasonable amounts of time, and it's very reasonably repairs. And every one of my clients kind of has a different level of like what they need to do to take care of their vehicles. Some are like, I don't care what it costs, I want my vehicle perfect. Other people are like, I got to put food on the table, I'm broke, make it safe. I work with everybody and everybody's range, and it's a good feeling to know that you're also helping people out. I enjoy that aspect of it. Now I'm getting a little off track here, but yeah, so I only advertise. I have an advertisement on my truck. You need something for business write-offs, but that's just my Instagram tag. And word of mouth is by far my best way to gain new customers. And that is simply because when you take care of somebody's problems, they are so happy to tell other people about you, but they also don't just go tell everybody about you. They're going to tell like their closest people. And generally, like if you start off with good clients, and they're going to tell other people, which probably will be good clients. And you just get this kind of clientele base that ends up being, good people. Like, let's be honest, at the end of the day, you work really hard for somebody. You don't want them to come and bitch about the bill, right? Like, I don't have that with any of my clients. It's always been, they're happy to pay me. They're like, wow, this is so much more affordable, especially if they've been quoted anywhere else. It's worked for me. But remember, in my circumstance here, right, like my overhead is low. I only need so much volume. So I haven't had to go and push for advertising. You won't find me in Google. You can type my business name in. You're not going to find me anywhere. It's very, very low key. And that is what I wanted. I never wanted to expand, right? I had an aspiration and a dream for a very short amount of time in the beginning when it was growing very quickly. And I was like, wow, I could get a bigger shop and I can get employees and all this stuff. And then the reality of like, what would happen if you get a tech in and they're not as thorough as you and they screw something up and it comes back on you and it's your insurance and the drama, and then all of a sudden you have all this overhead. And I quickly realized like, wow, my life goal is more to be like more involved with my family right now and not to be focused on business as growth. My plan has always been that when my kids get to that age where they are kind of branching out, they don't really want dad around as much, that's my time to really go full tilt into whatever venue of business or whatever I want. For now, I'm just in survival mode. Personal preference, guys. Like, go for it if you want it. If that's in your dreams to be super big right now, you can still use this as your stepping stone to get out and get started. Yeah, so I guess that's pretty much all I have to say, I think. I mean, there's more to it. There's been a lot of trials and tribulations. You put a lot of hours in. It's not all roses. There's been some great days where I'm like, this is killer. I make so much money. Like, I'm a genius. And then there have been days where I put in so many hours to make no money. Like literally comeback tight day and shit just going wrong. I've had both sides of the coin, really. And those days I'm like, just really. But it's part of it. It comes out in the wash. It's a very weird feeling to not have a structured pay set. If you're an employee right now, you likely get paid every 2 weeks or every month or every week or whatever, but you know what you're getting to some extent. You probably have a base minimum. To branch out on your own, and I have no idea how much money I'm going to make. And sometimes you could be slow in the beginning of the month, and your bills are creeping. You don't know when the money's coming. I have had slow times, more due to personal choice, I guess you could say, of not pushing. But nonetheless, not knowing when the money's coming and having a lot of variable outflow in my circumstance, it's something to get used to. It is. Well, I hope somebody found this useful. These are my experiences, just things that I've been recently reflecting on. Like I said, I might be at a position where I need to make a change in my personal direction, and it's not due to me not enjoying what I do. I would very happily just stay doing what I'm doing in this circumstance. I can easily just up my volume that I'm doing a little bit more and still be very comfortable with my time management and make considerably more money. Like, we could fine tune the wasted time. Me making my own personal decision here, I don't want to get into it too much, but it's more just coming down to stepping away from the property, and for that reason alone. So maybe I'll go full mobile. Maybe I'll get a job and take a break for a while. I don't know. Future is going to evolve. Maybe I'll keep you guys posted. But if anybody found this video at all helpful, then that's great. That's all I wanted to do. If you have any questions, shoot them in the comments. I'll try my best to answer them as honestly as I can. Good luck, everybody.